lecture today. No, 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 delete. Okay, let's go here. Today we're going to talk about some of the theories of human development. Human development encompasses a lot of different things, as we were saying last time. Um, it encompasses genetics, for one thing, of course. So we have to talk about genetics. This is a let's assume that both of these individuals have sickle cell anemia trait. They have the sickle cell anemia trait, so they produce a child, and that child has a 25% possibility of not having any. Oh, this it says thalassemia. Okay, we'll do it thalassemia major. This child has a 25% chance of not having anything. This child has a 25% possibility of having uh, the disease, and this child has a 50% chance of having the trait. We can do sickle cell anemia if you like. It's exactly the same. Mother has a trait, father has a trait. 1/4 of their children will not have the trait. 1/4 of their children will have sickle cell anemia, the disease, and 50% will carry the trait. That's the way it works. Molecular biology is another area, and this guy is looking at blood smear. Uh, and that's a lymphocyte right there. That's we're going to talk about this in the future. The lymphocytes, that one right there, is the white cell that fights viral infections. Neuroscience, study of the brain. Nutrition is another area of development. Embryology, looking at the child during gestation while it's growing in the mother's womb. Medicine, of course, is another area. Computer science is fairly new, actually. When I was first starting in psychology, this was not a very strong area because computers weren't very powerful at that point and had very little memory, almost none. Cognitive science, the study of how people think or why they think. Psychology, of course. Sociology, Dr. Haskey's area of expertise. Gerontology, the study of what happens to us as we get older. This is very interesting to me because I'm very old. I'm 75 years old, and I'm trying to fight old age as much as I possibly can. Wilson's another good example of someone who is fighting his age. Doesn't look his age, certainly doesn't act his age, and I try not to act my age as well. He's my hero. Epidemiology, this was huge during the coronavirus epidemic. We needed to understand how this worked. People got upset because not everybody that got the vaccination was immune to coronavirus, and that's just the way it works. I've been working in epidemiology for 50 years, and I can tell you it's a tough one. It's a tough one. Sometimes you vaccinate people and they still get sick. Um, Potentially, they broke down the vaccination, and it became weaker and weaker, and then they got a strong strain of the virus. And people are different. Everybody is different. I have a strong immune system. Other people have weak immune systems. I'm not sensitive to opiates, as weird as that is. So you can't knock me out with morphine. It doesn't work on me. Codeine doesn't work. OxyContin none of that stuff works on me. But most people, like the vast majority, 95% of the population of the world, is sensitive to opiates. But there's about 5% of the population that isn't, and that has to do with biochemistry, and of course, epidemiology is part of that. Cultural studies, anthropology, philosophy, as much fun as that is, this is one of my favorite areas. Philosophy, I like to I like to discuss philosophy, but there are very few people out there that can actually talk about it. Theology, there's another area that I enjoy talking about, people's religions. I've taught a class in comparative religions. It's kind of interesting. People think that you have to believe the way they believe. Of course, there's no reason for that. We can all have our own way of looking at things. Linguistics gets kind of fun. I actually have a degree in English, and I've taught linguistics. Economics, I've actually taught economics classes, micro and macroeconomics. History, I've taught history classes as well. Love history. You need to take classes from Dr. King and Professor Begay, Marius Begay. Fascinating. If you don't understand what happened in the past, today it seems to be a mystery to you. So the more you know about the past, the more you understand the present. Culture is the pattern of a group's customs, beliefs, art, and technology. This is a picture of a powwow at Fort Belknap, though, where I used to work. This is up in Hayes, up in the Little Rockies. As you can see, there's mountains behind them. It's a gorgeous powwow. I think it happens in July, maybe June. Anyway, or maybe August. These are dancers. Look like fancy dancers. No, they're not. What are they? Jingle dressmen. No. Shawl dancers. That's what they are. Population growth and change. Total fertility rate in a population is the number of births per woman. Developed countries are the most affluent countries in the world. They take up about 18% of the total world population are developed countries. Developing countries, they have less wealth than the developed countries. About 82% of the world's population are in developing countries. And this is one of the reasons why so many people want to immigrate to the United States or immigrate into Europe, because of the economic situation. Two reasons the United States follows a different demographic path than most developed countries. Our total fertility rate is higher than most developed countries, or it has been. It has been declining. United States allows more legal immigration than most developed countries, and also has millions of undocumented immigrants than other countries. And this is one of the reasons why the new president wants to shut down the border. He wants to stop immigration, get rid of all the illegal immigrants. Could get interesting because one of the things we're talking about, a lot of this has to do with economics. And because it has to do with economics, as soon as there aren't a lot of people clamoring for a job or trying to do something that nobody wants to do, you're going to have to pay more people more money in order to get it done. And there is a balancing point, and we're right there right now because unemployment is way, way down. It has been down throughout the Biden administration. So we'll see how this plays out. A lot of people don't understand these things, and so when they vote using their emotions rather than what they see in front of them. Sorry, I needed a drink of apple cider. Projected ethnic changes in the United States population in 2005. As we can see, the group that is going to grow the largest are the Latino slash Hispanic population. The reason they call it Latino is because it also includes Brazil. In Brazil, they don't speak Spanish. They speak Brazilian. They speak Portuguese. So if you say Latino, both Portuguese and Spanish are Latin derivative languages. That's why Latino fits. So we can see if you hate white people, there you go. We're going to drip down to 46% by 2050. Now, in 2050, I'll be 101 years old, and I still plan on being here. That's just the way it works. So I'll be one of 46%. African Americans are going to stay about the same. Asian Americans are going to grow from 5% to 8%. And the others, and that's where you guys are, that's where indigenous people are. It's going to go from 2% to 4%. And we can see how things have changed over time. The African American population, 14.6 in 2000. Then in 2010, they were 13.9%. Then in 2019, they're down to 13.7%. We can see how the Hispanic slash Latino population has increased percentage-wise. 17.2, 23.5, 25.8. And there you go. What is this? Oh, this is under the age of 18. Or 16, I'm sorry. So there you go. 40% of the world's population lives on less than $2 a day. Oh, that's not very much money. I bought a Big Mac last night. No, I didn't. What did I buy? A quarter pounder with cheese. I bought a quarter pounder with cheese. Cost me what, $6? Wow, they can't even have a cheeseburger. 80% of the world's population lives on a family income of less than $6,000 per year. Developed countries, 50% go on to tertiary education. Tertiary education is beyond high school. Developing countries, about 20% of the children don't even complete the primary grades, which is elementary school as far as you guys are concerned. Individualistic cultures, that's a cultural value such as independence and self-expression. So we are individualists in the United States. Most English-speaking countries are individualistic. Canada, Australia, and England, and Scotland, and Ireland, of course. But all of Europe are fairly individualistic. We are not the most individualistic country in the world. The most individualistic country in the world, most people assume it is France. Collectivistic are the rest of the people. That's potentially the Navajo Nation is more collectivistic than the United States in general. Collectivistic, the cultural values such as obedience and group harmony are very important. China, Japan, South Korea, North Korea also, India. Where else are we going? China? Did I already go to China? Anyway, most of the other countries in the world are collectivistic. Most of the countries in Africa are collectivistic. Asian countries are collectivistic. Most South American countries are collectivistic. Traditional culture is a rural culture that adheres more closely to historical traditions than urban people do. Globalization, increasing connections between different parts of the world. And one of the things that is happening today, and one of the reasons that globalization is accelerating, is because of the internet and because of social media and the mere fact that everybody owns a cell phone. that's causing mass globalization. And that's one of the reasons why in the world should somebody in Kenya care who gets elected president in the United States? But of course, since everybody is connected, why are we making such a big deal out of the war between Russia and the Ukraine? Because everybody is involved and this thing could explode. That's what they anticipated was going to happen with the attack on Israel from Gaza. And of course, they neutralized Gaza and started attacking Lebanon. And it looked like we were in for a more international war than just the Gazans versus the Israelis. As you can see, most of the world's population are developing, and most of the developed countries, smaller populations in the developed countries. This is Turkey, that's Greece. There you go. They're all well, Turkey's not part of Europe. Turkey is in Asia. But Turkey, Greece, Italy, this is the rest of Europe. Iceland is developed. Greenland only has 57,000 people in it. And for some reason, we won't go into politics, but Donald Trump is saying that he wants to buy Greenland. And Greenland, of course, belongs to Denmark. This is Chile, this little sliver right here, that is Chile. It is a developed country. And as you can see, the rest are developing countries in all of Central America. Mexico is a developed country. Japan is a developed country. And South Korea. South Korea, turns out, is the most technologically astute country in the world. And it also has the lowest birth rate of any country in the world. Majority culture in the United States, the majority culture, of course, is the white population. They set the norms and the standards in the country. All countries have majority cultures. You may not recognize it if you go to. You might not recognize it if you go to Serbia, for example. I was just studying Serbia. Serbia is about 85% white Russian, but the rest of the population are people that potentially wandered into the Americas and became the indigenous population. So those people do exist, the Serbians, the ethnic Serbians, and they represent about 15% of the population. So there is a majority culture in just about every country. You go to Australia, for example. Of course, the white population is the majority population, but there are also indigenous people that live in Australia. You can go to just about any country, and you have different groups. A lot of times they may look the same to you, but they know the difference because they speak different languages and they have different cultures. So this is, if you go to Kenya, you think, oh, well, everybody in Kenya is black. Well, yeah, they may all be, most of them may be black. Some Asians have migrated to Kenya. But even in the black population, they come from different groups. Contexts are the settings and the circumstances. So if you saw me, of course, if I were teaching at Dene College on the Saley campus, you would come to class with me. You'd see me there. You would be watching me or sleeping while I'm talking. And but if you saw me at Bosch's, you might not recognize me because the context is different. You know me as the guy that stands in front of the room and bores you silly. You wouldn't recognize me as the strange white guy wandering around Bosch's looking for, I don't know, code red or something. Socioeconomic status, that's includes your social class. It's your social class, which includes your educational level, your income level, and your occupational status. So my social class, my socioeconomic status, my educational level, I have 5 degrees, PhD, and 2 master's degrees, a bachelor's degree, and an AA. My income level, I make about somewhere in the $60,000 range. My wife's a retired Air Force colonel, '06, and her retirement pay is more than what I make. And my occupational status, I have a fairly good occupational status. I'm a college professor, so my socioeconomic status is pretty high. I've got lots of education. My income level is over $100,000. Thank you, my wife. And my occupational status is highly thought of. So I have a pretty high socioeconomic status. Gender is the expectations of whether you're a male or a female. I know we have expanded beyond the concept of male and female, but gender has to do with looking at somebody and saying, "Oh, that person is a male, that person is a female. They must act like this. They will probably go to college to do this." That's what gender has to do with expectations. Ethnicity is your cultural origin and traditions, your race, religion, and language. That all makes up your ethnicity. Worldwide variations in population and income. Developing countries, once again, have a lot more money than everybody else does. Developed countries represent only 18% of the world's population, yet they are much wealthier than developing countries. At what point in its economic development should a developing country be reclassified as a developed country? That's a good question. How much money do you have to be bringing in order to have that idea? Discontinuity is where there are abrupt shifts in development. Puberty and sexual maturation is such a discontinuity. While people grow from infancy to puberty, the change in adulthood tends to be fairly abrupt. And of course, the difference between this person and this person is fairly abrupt. The difference between this person and this person is very, very much different. And of course, this is the transition phase, 13 to 14. This would be probably considered the transition phase. Anyway, that's discontinuity. The fact that the change is fairly abrupt. Most other things, you just continue growing as you get older, and to a point, and then it just levels off. Everything else is continuous. And for some reason, there we go. Universality refers to the same things happening to everyone at the same time and in the same way. Puberty hits everyone at about the same time, you get a peak of it around 10 or 11 or 12, and then all of a sudden it hits you, and you continue to mature into your 20s, actually. And so you won't be your adult self until you are about 25 years old. And that is especially your brain. The ability to learn hits everyone around age 5, 6, and lasts a lifetime. The reality is you're learning things all along, but at age 5 and 6, you suddenly develop the ability to learn beyond your family. If you go to kindergarten, you go to preschool, a lot of times you don't really pick a whole lot up. So the whole learning process, we are learning constantly. I'm still learning, and I try to find new things every day, but you continue learning all your life. Okay, if we look at this picture, this is a, I don't know, 3rd or 4th grade class somewhere in the distant past. So you can see everybody's about the same. They look about the same. There's a class from Queens, New York City. Queens is in New York City. And that's a junior high class. And as you can see, Some of the girls are bigger than the boys. They won't stay bigger than the boys. The boys will suddenly have a growth spurt that goes beyond that. But in middle school, a lot of the girls will be actually taller than the boys. And there's a high school class, and if they were all on the same level, we'd see that most of the boys are taller than most of the girls. This is a high school class from Brecksville High School in Ohio. Brecksville is just south of Cleveland. And of course, this is 1959. So the fashions are kind of interesting. Mid-calf. Probably if you had a dress that was any shorter than that, this lady right here. Whoops, I'm sorry. Wait a minute. Okay, let me do this again so I get an arrow. Okay, I don't want to see you guys. All right. Anyway, this lady would probably tell you to go home and change your skirt. And the haircuts, you can see the haircuts are so cool. And this guy's the coolest, of course. He's got his arms crossed. Brecksville, 1959. Which means that these people were, wait a minute, they were born around 1940. And probably most of them have passed away from old age. I can't remember why I put this in here. These are the male strippers from Magic Mike. Magic Mike was a movie written by this guy right here, Channing Tatum. I think that's his name. Anyway, he was a stripper once upon a time. So, anyway, I can't remember. Like I said, I can't remember why I put this in here. There they are. These are college kids, and the reason these guys are leaning down is because they're all so much taller than everybody else. And as far as the boys and girls are concerned, as you can see, all the males are taller than everybody except her. I mean, if he were standing over here with her, he would be shorter probably. But these guys are probably pretty tall. Anyway, okay, that's the way it works. Context-specific development refers to the fact that differences in people may have to do with the environment in which they develop. If you were living in Appalachia, or Appalachia as we used to say in Indiana, in the 1920s, and you were a young man, a young fellow, even a child, one of the things that you would do would be to work. That's the environment. Of course, if you live on the farm, you'll still be working if you're younger. If you live in the city, potentially you wouldn't have to work. Maybe your parents make enough money that you wouldn't have to work. But of course, if you are in coal mining country, then even the little guys get to work. Of course, we have laws against this now. Right? We used to anyway. I'm not exactly sure where we're headed. Affluenza is really kind of interesting. This guy is a kid by the name of Couch. His last name is Couch. This is his mother right here. Now this is really weird because Ethan, that's his name. Ethan Couch, when he was 16 years old, he killed 4 people while driving under the influence in 2013 in Texas. There was a car that was stopped on the side of the road. They were trying to change a tire. There were other people there trying to help them, and he swerved off the road and hit that car, killed the people that were in the car, and killed 2 people that were trying to help the people in the parked car. He was not only drunk, but he was also under the influence of marijuana. He was drinking and smoking dope. He was driving on a restricted license. He was speeding. He was going 70 miles an hour in a residential area. There were several people in his car. I think there were 7 people in his truck. It was a pickup truck, a F-350. So it was huge and very heavy. And he just plowed right into that truck. flipped his own truck over. He didn't get hurt, but 7 people were injured. No, 9 people were injured, and 4 people were killed. Okay, so they wanted to send him to rehab. Couch was indicted on 4 counts of intoxication manslaughter for recklessly driving under the influence. Couch was sentenced to 10 years of probation, subsequently ordering him to undergo therapy at an inpatient facility. Couch's attorney argued that Couch had affluenza and needed rehabilitation instead of prison. Affluenza, he argued, that Couch had no understanding of boundaries, as his affluent parents had never given him any boundaries. As weird as all that sounds, they had never told him the difference between what's right and wrong. And his father and his mother, both his father and his mother, had broken the law and gotten off because of their wealth. And so they felt that because they were wealthy, that they could do just about anything that they wanted. And they taught their child that he could do just about anything he wanted. Okay, so he's put on 10 years of probation. After a video was posted online purporting to show Couch drinking at a party, Couch became a subject of a manhunt. Now remember, he's on probation for 10 years. The judge has sent him to therapy, and he's not supposed to imbibe. But here he is. They have a video of him drinking at a party, so he goes on the run. And they can't catch him. They can't find him. For 2 years, they can't find him. And then in 2015, authorities detained Couch and his mother in the Mexican resort city of Puerto Vallarta. That's where they were. And they are sent back to the United States, and he has to go to jail. The story's not over with yet, because they eventually sent him to prison because they just couldn't control this kid. This is the father and this is the mother. Both of them were indicted. She was indicted for helping a fleeing fugitive. And I guess if you have money in Texas, you don't have to worry about. Anyway, that's what they called affluenza. The fact that it's a disease. It's not his fault. He has no idea what he's doing because, he's never been told what to do. Or that just because you have money, you can't get away with things. Now, personally, I'm really interested to see how this administration plays out, because it seems to be run by people with billions and billions of dollars. And so let's watch. Let's watch and see if we don't, if people like Musk and Elon Musk, Musk and Bezos and Zuckerberg don't try to take over our lives. Could be interesting to watch a democracy with that in mind. Anyway, affluenza. Scientists feel that there are 4 interactive forces influencing the way an individual is going to turn out: biological forces, psychological forces, sociocultural forces, and life cycle forces. Biological forces, these are the forces that include genetic factors such as height, weight, longevity, sensitivity to environmental factors, health-related factors such as being exposed to different pathogens, or the consumption of toxins, alcohol, tobacco, drugs that might deplete one's immune system. All of these are biological forces. And one of the things that we noticed during the coronavirus pandemic was that people who had depleted their immune systems, who had chronic diseases, or who suffered from alcoholism or drug abuse, a lot of those people caught coronavirus and had a very difficult time fighting it off. And the main reason is because their immune systems were so depleted. Normally, you don't think about your immune system. You don't have to worry about your immune system. You can drink all you want. You can shoot up all you want. You can smoke all the dope that you want, because there aren't that many diseases around making people sick. But then the coronavirus hit, and by golly, some of those people didn't come out the other end. Psychological forces, these forces include the way that we see the world, our perception. It includes our cognitive capacity, our intelligence. It includes our personality and the emotions that we bring to our interpretation of the world. I'll have to admit that I'm a kind of a strange fellow. When I was young, I used to read the obituaries. The reason I read the obituaries is because I wanted to find out how long I was going to live. I had a feeling that I was doing okay. I was in pretty good shape. I grew up on a farm in Indiana. I had a lot of old relatives. I had great uncles and great aunts who were living into their 80s and 90s. And I was thinking, this is really kind of strange because you'd read the obituaries, and this guy died of lung cancer at 56. This lady died of lung cancer or a stroke at 47. You know, why in the world are these people dying so young? And then I figured out that these individuals were doing things they probably shouldn't have been doing, like smoking. Smoking was really popular right after World War II, and of course I was born in '49. When I was born in 1949, the life expectancy of a white male in the United States was only 59 years. Well, I'm 75 right now. Actually, I've gone beyond the life expectancy right now of white males. The life expectancy right now is 74.76 years, and well, I'm 75, so I've already gone beyond that. And evidently, I'm on the downhill slope, but I don't feel like it. I walk 3 miles a day. I lift twice a week, and my cognitive abilities. Sometimes I can't remember words, and you'll see that. I can't remember what word I'm looking for. I can't find it in my brain. Other than that, I'm doing pretty well. I still read a lot. I still am fairly lucid. Next week I will. Oh, next Tuesday, by the way, next Tuesday is election day in Iowa, and I will be working the polls. I am a poll worker. So there won't be any office hours on Tuesday. I will be helping people vote. So there you go. Sociocultural influences. The sociocultural forces involve the world and the people around us influencing how we develop our culture, the society, ethnic factors. These are all really important as far as people in the Navajo Nation are concerned. Other people get all this information from the internet, which is kind of weird because are they talking about the culture of where they live, or are they talking about the culture in New York City? Are they talking about the culture in London, France, and Japan, and South Korea? The society that they're dealing with, you can see these ladies are dressed the same. This is a rice farmer and actually this is in Vietnam, Southeast Asia. Lots of ethnic factors that have that influence us. I have a friend or a former student from Bangladesh, and it is very interesting when he talks about wanting to find a wife. Because he's from Bangladesh, and according to his culture, according to his ethnicity, he should find a wife from Bangladesh. But because he's lived in the United States for such a long time, he doesn't think he can stand. He would be able to put up with a wife with that mindset. It's fascinating. So that has changed it has skewed the way he looks at things. I haven't talked to him for a couple months, so he may be dating someone. He got into making pottery. It's weird. He's got a PhD in psychology, and he's focusing on making pottery. Life cycle forces, people change as they age, and I can tell you people change as they age, maybe not as much as you think. Life cycle forces will have different influences at different times of a person's life. For example, a pregnant teen will have different concerns than a woman who is pregnant in her 40s, and that's what's going on here. They look awfully happy, but then again, these people look awfully happy. I'm guessing that he's the father. I'm hoping that he's the father. She sure seems happy that she's pregnant. His shirt says, "Trust me, blondes do have more fun," I think. I think that's what it says. And of course, he's carrying a Bud Light and showing off his rodeo buckle. Wow, she got herself a winner there. Except the fact that he's a Cubs fan. All right. The first theory that tried to explain human development was the evolutionary theory of Charles Darwin. Darwin looked at biological processes and attempted to explain how humans adapted to their environment. Darwin felt that all creatures, including humans, must maintain a fitness of the for the environment that they live in or adapt to fit the environment. People need to adapt to their environment. Whether it's a hurricane in some place, they probably should have evacuated if their house is going into the ocean. Adaptation merely means change. It doesn't imply progress or improvement. So we need to adapt to our environment. You have adapted to the high desert of Arizona. I had a really difficult time adapting to the high desert in Arizona. For one thing, I've lived most of my life at a much lower elevation. You guys are at 7,000 feet. In Saley, you're at 7,000 feet. Where I grew up was at 400 feet, and where I am now is at 700 feet. So most of my life I haven't spent up in the mountains, and for that reason, it's not that I've been up to 12,000 feet. Of course, I've flown a lot, but at the same time, things are different, a little bit different now. I've got a heart condition that is a lot more stable at lower elevations than 7,000 feet. And that's one of the reasons I won't be able to teach at Saley next year in the fall. But, you know, that's just the way things work. I'm fine here. I just wouldn't be fine at 7,000 feet. Would I be able to adapt? At this point, that level, that type of adaptation isn't going to be able to happen because I'm 75 years old. And like I said, I have a heart condition. And it's fine here. I could live into my hundreds here, but it would be too much of a strain on my heart at 7,000 feet. But then again, I can't fly either. Not anymore. You'd be surprised some of the flying that I've done in my time. Psychologists today have adapted Darwin's theories into a field known as evolutionary psychology or sociobiology. They see genetics as the prime driving force in social behavior. They do not discount the interaction between heredity and the environment. And this is a huge question that comes up. Anyway, changes in the brain size in early humans. I was going to ask you a question about which hominid had the largest brain. It is not this guy at 1,300 cc's, cubic centimeters. It was Neanderthal man that had the largest brain at about 1750. So there you go. You got early hominid had only 440 cc's of brain space. The early Homo sapiens like habilis and erectus only around 1,000 cc's, and modern humans have 1,300 cc's of intelligence, of brains. But Neanderthal had 1750, so there you go. The ultimate goal of all individual behavior and developmental change is survival of their genetic material. All organisms adapt their behavior to ensure the survival of the basic elements of life. And of course, he's wielding a stick, potentially as a weapon. Yeah, he doesn't know what he's doing. But he could probably learn if it allowed him to adapt. Sociobiologists look at different aspects of social behavior to determine if it is adaptive. Is altruism adaptive? Is competition adaptive? Is socialization adaptive? Is mating behavior adaptive? Is communication adaptive? And of course, all these individuals are looking at cell phones, and he's on his iPad. And this has to do with mating behavior. All three of these guys are hitting on this lady at a bar. She's got a beer, he's got a beer, he's got a beer, I don't know. Anyway, mating behavior. Ethology is the study of how innate behavior and hereditary factors influence developmental changes. One example would be Noam Chomsky's LAD, the language of acquisition device, a genetic predisposition to learn language to facilitate social interaction. This is an amazing brain structure that we have when we are born, and we will maintain it until we are about 12 years old. At that stage, it goes away. It's not there anymore unless you continue to use it. You continue to learn new languages, not your own language. So if you learn a foreign language up to the age of 12, potentially you will maintain that language. You can maintain that language. Another example of ethology would be Konrad Lorenz's work showing that inducing the mothering instinct in a species leads to survivability in the offspring. And that's what's going on here. She's not going to let anybody get close to her cubs. This is really kind of interesting because when I was living in Montana, one of my students was a farmer who was developing cows in Montana are a little bit different than cows other places. It gets really cold in Montana. So in order for cattle to survive through the winter, unless you house them, which most people don't have large enough barns to do, they let them, they have to figure out how to allow these animals to survive. One of the problems is water. Another problem is staying warm enough because it gets really, really cold, especially if the wind is blowing. And of course, they feed them in the wintertime. But some people don't. And they do that the same thing with their horses. And they've had really bad winters where they lost a fairly significant percentage of their cattle. But one of the problems that they were having is that, especially during a bad winter, a yearling calf would very often freeze to death because the cow wouldn't allow him to be close to her. She was trying to survive on her own. So what he did, he bred a strong mothering instinct into his cattle, and by golly, wasn't losing any yearlings. And so all of a sudden, after about 4 or 5 years, and people found out, hey, you only had 2% loss, or you only had 5% loss. We had 40%. They started buying his mother cows, his cows, and breeding with his bulls because they produced female cattle that had a stronger mothering instinct. It's really weird. Anyway, an example of Lorenz's work is research that has found that when women are shown pictures of a baby, they have a greater pupillary dilation than men. Eckhard Hess in 1962 concluded that women may have a greater biological predisposition to respond to babies. And of course, that's not universal. It doesn't mean that every woman has the same instincts. Some women are not good mothers. Most women are either okay or pretty good or really good, but there are women that don't. And sadly, I married one. My first wife was not much of she was okay at making babies. She just didn't want to take care of them. Anyway. Another developmental theory is a psychodynamic theory. The first developmental theory was the psychodynamic theory. Psychodynamic theories view the individual as solitary against the rest of the world. The first psychodynamic theory was Freud's psychosexual theory that purported that man developed due to his sex drive, the psychosexual developmental theory. Erikson refuted Freud and said that humans were driven by social needs, the psychosocial developmental theory. And both of these are psychodynamic theories. One is the psychosocial, the other is psychosexual. And this is Erikson and this is Freud. Psychodynamic theory, the first stage of the psychosexual theory is that the oral stage when the baby focuses their focus must be on its mouth or it will starve. It has to suckle, whether it's from a bottle or its mother's breast, it has to suckle. The first social crisis in the psychosocial theory is trust versus mistrust. That must be resolved at birth. So they either trust that the parent will be there, or they will not. They will mistrust people all of their lives. The second stage of the psychosexual theory is the anal stage between years 1 and 3, when the child focuses on potty training to become a responsible member of society. The second crisis in the psychosocial theory is autonomy versus shame. Shame and doubt, when the child must learn to become an independent person. And in essence, they're both the same. You can only be independent if you know where the toilet is, and you're going to be shamed if you don't deposit your waste in the right receptacle in the right place. So you need to become autonomous. The third stage of the psychosexual developmental theory is the phallic stage, between 3 and 6, when the child realizes that they are either a male or a female, a boy or a girl. The third crisis in the psychosocial theory is initiative versus guilt, when the child learns to try things, new things, or they don't do that, in which case they have no curiosity. The fourth stage of Freud's psychosexual theory deals with a time of sexual complacency from age 6 until puberty, called the latency stage. Nothing's going on. They don't care about sex. They know that they're a boy or a girl. Everything's fine, but their focus is on development. The next crisis in Erikson's psychosocial theory is industry versus inferiority in the same age range, when the child learns to compete. And they learn this in school, to compete in school. So they either try or they feel inferior. Freud's last stage is the genital stage, when the individual emerges as a reproductive being. Erikson's adolescent crisis is identity versus identity confusion, when teenagers try to discover a comfortable persona for the rest of their lives. And we saw this back here. Maybe, there we go. We saw this back here. Identity versus identity confusion. Identity, who do they identify with? The haircuts are pretty much the same, as we can see. It's got a warrior's face. There's only one guy. Oh, he's smiling. Two people are smiling. There we go. Okay, identity, as you can see, all these guys look kind of the same. They got the same shorts on. They mostly have the same shoes on. And that is their identity. They're identifying with each other. And the females are about the same. They're all wearing about the same kind of clothes. Either skirts or shorts, top that, that's cut lower than a male's. Look, all these guys have their collars up into their necks, and the girls have their are you know their shirts are lower in front. Wait a minute. Different. Isn't that interesting? Wait a minute. Same. There you go. Isn't that interesting? Anyway, not important, I guess. Sure it is. Everything's important if you're curious. But the psychosocial theory continues throughout the rest of an individual's life. Erikson's next crisis faces the question of marriage or bachelorhood, intimacy versus isolation. And of course, who would want to be around these guys with their funny shoes and great hair? The middle adulthood crisis that Erikson feels that people go through is generativity versus stagnation. During this crisis, the individual has to decide whether to help and mentor the younger generation or maintain a selfish lifestyle. Erikson's crises continue right to the end of life. The last crisis an individual faces is integrity versus despair. Does one see one's life as satisfactory or as a failure? This is satisfactory, and this is failure. Learning theory is considered a theory that is part of the development because it explains how people gain knowledge and experience. B.F. Skinner and John B. Watson suggested that they could change a child's behavior through conditioning. And this is Skinner, and this is Watson. This is him when he was young, and this is him when he got out of education and was an advertising executive using conditioning techniques. Behaviorism. Watson theorized that children could be conditioned into anything you wanted, but Skinner actually proved that he was right. Skinner developed the Skinner box for use with animal subjects. That was eventually expanded into a human version, and this is the human version right here. And that's his daughter, actually, Skinner's daughter. The human version of Skinner box in the form of a crib never really caught on. Skinner's use of rewards and punishment were referred to as operant conditioning. Skinner felt that by reinforcing or rewarding a behavior, a controller could increase the likelihood of the behavior occurring again. On the other hand, by punishing a behavior, the controller would make it less likely to occur again. Social learning theory, Albert Bandura is the author of the social learning theory. He's an individual from Canada that taught at Columbia University. Bandura feels that people learn and copy people who are around them through imitation, which he referred to as observational learning. And if we look at those pictures of the kids in school, we can see that, are they imitating each other? Well, if they weren't, it just so happened that they all were wearing the same clothes or similar clothes. Even the girls in the college class were wearing similar low-cut blouses. And the boys all had shirts that went up to their throats. Fascinating. Bandura feels that people construct themselves through rewards, punishment, and imitation, and then view the outcome as self-efficacy. And of course, we saw me at the beginning of this lecture. I'm in a hooded sweatshirt, and that's because it's cold outside. And I had just come in from outside. That's why my hair was all messed up. And it still is, by the way. You just can't see it. Okay, anyway. So who am I trying to copy? That's a good question. Who wears a hooded sweatshirt? Does somebody that I find that I want to look like, do they have a hooded sweatshirt on? Is that why I have these clothes on? I actually have on cargo pants too. I like cargo pants because then I don't have to sit on my billfold. The cognitive development theory was developed by Jean Piaget from Switzerland. Jean Piaget spoke French, wrote in French. Piaget based his theory on the cognitive development of the child. Switzerland's kind of an interesting country. The northern part speaks German. The western part speaks French because it's next to the French border, and the southern part speaks Italian because it's on the Italian border. But Piaget was in the French portion. Actually, most of the large cities are in the west. Bern and what's the capital? Why can't I think? Anyway, see, there you go. I can't think of a word. Geneva. Piaget's first stage is the sensory motor stage, and that begins at birth and runs through age 2. Now, you're going to notice that the psychosexual theory and the psychosocial theory and Piaget's theory kind of mirror each other because something is happening, whether it's sexual, social, or cognitive. It's happening about the same time. So the sensory motor stage runs until about age 2. In this stage, the infant and toddler's knowledge is based on their senses and motor skills. That's why everything goes into their mouth. Piaget's second stage runs from toddlerhood until the beginning of elementary school, 2 to 6, and involves the child's first attempts at reading and using numbers. This stage is referred to as the preoperational thought stage. And of course, that is very similar to the psychosexual and psychosocial theory. We're just focusing on something different. Freud focused on sex. Erikson focused on the social aspect. Piaget focuses on the cognitive development. But so far, so far, everything is about the same. Happens at about the same time. The third stage runs from the first grade through the junior high school and involves the continued maturation of applying experiences to the logical operations of their knowledge base and is referred to as concrete operational thought. And of course, this fits right in with Freud's latency stage and with Erikson's inferiority versus industry phase. The last stage, the formal operational thought, begins in early adolescence and runs through the rest of an individual's life. This stage involves the ability to think abstractly and deal with hypothetical situations. And of course, this also fits right in with the psychosexual and psychosocial phase. This is Harry Potter, of course. Vygotsky's theory. Lev Vygotsky was a Russian psychologist who felt that the environment dictated what and how a child should be taught. Now, this is really kind of fascinating, and I'm only going to tell you because I lived through it. But we didn't like the Russians after World War II. As a matter of fact, they were the reason for the Cold War. We also weren't real happy with the French, and for that reason, Piaget, we weren't reading Piaget until the 1970s. Now, Piaget was writing from the 1930s, 1940s on. He was talking about his theories. But we didn't read him until the 1970s because we didn't, in the United States, we didn't translate French. We weren't doing that. And then somebody did it in the 1970s, and all of a sudden we're going, wow, this is a great theory. Same thing happened with Lev Vygotsky. Vygotsky was a Russian, and we didn't really normalize relations with the Russians until the wall went down in 1989. So we didn't read Lev Vygotsky, even though he died during World War II. He wrote all these theories that made tons and tons of sense that we agree with now. But at that time, of course, we weren't reading Russians. We thought it was all propaganda. So it's really kind of interesting that we didn't read Piaget because Piaget wrote in French and we didn't translate French. And it's interesting that Vygotsky, even though he makes just a whole lot of sense, that we weren't reading Vygotsky because he was a Russian. Lev Vygotsky was a Russian psychologist who felt that the environment dictated what and how a child should be taught. Vygotsky's sociocultural theory saw beliefs, customs, and skills of the culture being passed from adults to the young, and this included formal education. So that's where it's older people giving the knowledge to the young people. Okay. Humanistic theories were developed from the work of Carl Rogers. This is Carl Rogers. Rogers saw the individual as a dynamic force that has the power to seek their own self-fulfillment by setting goals, meeting inner needs, and expressing creative energies. Humanism was developed to combat the Freudian concept of conscious drives controlling our behavior. It also argues that the environment does not dictate who the individual is going to be. And that's humanism. That's Rogers. Besides Rogers, one of the leading humanists was Abraham Maslow. Maslow recognized that people were motivated to seek their full potential, which he labeled self-actualization. Maslow arranged people's needs in a hierarchy that is normally arranged in a pyramidal structure. So first of all, you need to feed people, you need to make sure they've got food. Secondly, you need to find them someplace to live. And then you can worry about everything else. If you can feed them and give them someplace to live, then they can develop beyond that. It was Maslow's idea that before people could achieve a higher level on the pyramid of needs, they had to take care of all the lower needs first. Unless one's physiological needs are taken care of, safety is inconsequential. It is easy to observe Maslow's need structure in the plight of the refugees flooding into Europe from Africa and the Middle East. Physiological needs are the most important. Safety needs are not necessary until survival needs are taken care of. The personal needs are secondary to basic survival. Researchers who have worked with Maslow's hierarchy of needs see people changing their needs as they grow older. Infants and toddlers need their physiological needs taken care of. As children get older, their safety needs are met. Adolescents are stuck in a time seeking self-esteem and belongingness. Only adults have fulfilled their lower needs and can seek self-actualization. One last theory is that of John Bowlby, as proven by Mary Ainsworth. Bowlby developed a theory that used an infant's attachment pattern to its parents as the basis for future human interaction. Ainsworth developed a test to determine the type of attachment the child displayed with their parents and came up with 4 major types of attachment: secure attachment, avoidant insecure attachment, disorganized disoriented attachment, and preoccupied insecure attachment. And that is that. We will be talking about all those developmental theories as the semester goes on.